Welcome to FailCraft, the podcast where we dive into the messy, real side of success and explore how setbacks become the stepping stones for growth and clarity. I'm your host, Ezekiel Iferia, and today's guest is Alan Lazaros. On paper, he is a powerhouse, a computer engineer with an MBA, the CEO of Next Level University, and the host of a top 100 podcast with over 2,000 episodes. But his story is framed by two tragic bookends. Age 2, his father died in a car accident. At age 26, Alan was involved in a near fatal car crash himself. That second crash was his wake-up call. He realized he had achieved paper success, the degree, the job, the money, but was internally bankrupt, filled with regret and abandonment issues. He is here to share how he engineered his way out of that existential crisis, why he believes in a heart-driven approach to growth, and how to stop optimizing your life for a resume and start optimizing it for fulfillment. So, Alan, I am thrilled to welcome you to FailCraft. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I do not take it lightly to be here. I believe that what a human being pays attention to, what they hear and what they see, changes their future drastically. So thank you so much for having me. I don't take it lightly.
Thank you very much for joining us, Alan. Let's dive in. Your life story has this haunting symmetry. You lost your father to a car accident when you were a toddler, and then at 26, you nearly lost your own life in a similar way. You said that in that moment of that crash, you questioned everything. So I'd like you to take us to moment after the crash, when the adrenaline wore off and you realized you were still alive. So was the overwhelming feeling of gratitude, or was it a terrifying realization that you had been living the wrong life?
Yeah, very much. So you refer to when I was 26, I got in a head-on collision, my fault, with a lift-kitted pickup truck doing about 30 miles an hour. So everyone was physically okay. No one was killed, fortunately. Because if anyone had been killed, it would have been my fault. I was crossing the double yellows. I was on the wrong side of the road. I was supposed to yield, but I didn't. The yield sign was covered by the snowbanks at the time. I live in New England, so it was a bad winter. And after that car accident, my dad had died in a car when he was 28. So for me, this was sort of the second chance my dad never got. And if that was the end, would I have been proud of the way that I lived my one life? And the answer, unfortunately, was no. Now, so really what it was the answer was no to that question. Did I live my life in a way that I would be proud of? And the answer was no. Now, I want to make this as clear as possible. In hindsight, I've reflected on this a lot. I've rewatched the movie of my own life over and over and over again in the personal development, self-improvement, personal growth space, sort of self-help. I have a therapist named Carol. When I reached my 30s, I really started to understand my past and analyze it. That said, I did very well. I wasn't a bad kid or anything like that, but I wasn't living a life true to myself. So there's a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by a woman named Bronnie Ware. I actually interviewed her 4 years later, but I always carried these flashcards with me. I still have them here. They're all tattered and ripped up. But the number one regret of the dying by Bronnie Ware, she has a TED Talk as well, is I wish I had lived a life true to myself and not what others expected of me. And I think that that's really what it was, is I realized that I was living a life that I thought was success. I did the traditional path. I did the preschool, kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, high school, college, corporate. That's a traditional American path. And I was in corporate at the time, doing very well. I had all the external success. Beautiful girlfriend named Courtney at the time. I was a sales engineer. I managed a territory of Vermont, Connecticut, Western Massachusetts, working for a company called Cognex, one of the most successful machine vision company. They sold industrial automation equipment into manufacturing facilities all across the world. And I was on my way to a really successful career. However, when I got in that car accident, that's when I found personal growth, self-improvement, personal development. That's when I started living from the inside out instead of the outside in. And that's when I realized I was externally successful, but not internally fulfilled. And I think we all fall on one end of that or the other. I think if you're extrinsically motivated, you probably are pretty successful, but maybe you're not super self-aware, and maybe you don't know your core values, and maybe you haven't faced some of your past. And then there's the opposite, which is people who know themselves, they have self-awareness, they have their core values, they live in alignment with who they are, but maybe they're not as successful. And so my job now is to bridge that gap. Some people are living from the outside in, other people are living from the inside out. Statistically speaking, men tend to be more extrinsically motivated, and they tend to not know themselves as well. And women tend to know themselves really well, but not be as extrinsically driven. There's intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. And I think all of us, if we want to be both successful and fulfilled, need to have both. And I realized in that moment that I was living a life that was more extrinsically motivated than fulfillment and meaning motivated. So I reoriented my entire life around fitness and meaning and purpose and calling and mission and growth and contribution. And that was 11 years ago. And so now I'm here and I'm contributing right now. And this that I'm doing right now might be hard, but it's deeply meaningful because you know that you're living for something bigger than yourself.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing that story with us. So I'd like to know, you mentioned that before the accident, you were successful from the outside looking in as a computer engineer with an MBA. You had won the game society told you to play. So I'd like to know why did that victory feel like a failure when you had that near-death car crash experience?
I won. If you study game theory, there's two types of games. There's infinite game and finite game. And the game that society wants you to play, for lack of better phrasing, is the traditional path. And it's, find a person, get married, buy a home, have children, be successful, corporate, whatever it is. And having come from an entrepreneurial path for the last 11 years, I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that other path. I think you have to decide consciously. And I think that that's really what the problem was, is a lot of us are on autopilot. We're going through life doing what we think we're supposed to do, but we didn't do it based on our own conclusion. I think life or death situations like the death of a loved one or the death of a pet or a car crash or an illness, these things wake us up. And it's our wake-up call to, you know what, I really didn't decide. This is kind of me going through life and not realizing that I'm on the wrong path and reassessing. And I think that that's really what I'm encouraging people to do is constantly reassess and get off autopilot, because your past is your past, your present is your present, and your future can be anything you want it to be. So I have a certain past that's already written. I have a certain present moment right now, but the future is spotless. And so that, I don't know if that answers your question, but I do know that when you're on autopilot, you're not really consciously choosing. So society had a game and a path set out for me that I think as I grew older and I realized that I could have died in that car accident, like my father, I realized that I didn't live the most magnificent life I could. I didn't reach my full potential, and that's what I'll land on. And this is, I've found out later on, a little more unique to me than I realized. But the amount that I care about reaching my full potential is really high, like really, really high. And I wasn't. I was drinking too much and too often. I was working hard, but not nearly as hard as I could. I had a lot of friends. I had high school friends and college friends and corporate friends, and I had a lot of fun, but fun wasn't meaningful for me. A lot of that was empty. I had a blast, I did, but a lot of it was empty. So I reoriented my entire life after that car accident around my thing. And my thing whether it was given to me or I uncovered it or I chose it or all three. My thing is reaching my full potential and helping others do the same. I am here to reach my own unique full potential and help others do the same. That's my mantra, my philosophy, my core value, my mission, my goal. And I do that through health, wealth, and love. I do that through coaching, training, and podcasting. And so you go through life with very little clarity. You wake, you're born and you don't know who you are yet. You don't know what you like and don't like. You don't know who you love and don't love. You don't know anything. You don't know how the world works. You don't know yourself. You don't know others. And then you go and through massive pain and failure, figure out, okay, that's not really for me. And this is, and that's not really for me. And this is. And hopefully by the time you get to your 20s and 30s, particularly 30s, you start to really realize like what is for you and what isn't for you, because the world there's 8 billion people on planet Earth. There's almost 6 billion people on the internet. And that's increasing. It's 5.65 last I researched it, but it's increasing because of Starlink. And there's infinite possibilities of what you do. How do you choose what to do? So the only wrong answer, in my opinion, is to not carve your own path, is to not decide for yourself. And if you default into what society's game is that you mentioned in that question, I would say that's the only wrong answer. The only wrong answer is to not contemplate your path and constantly contemplate your path, and then make sure you're making decisions consciously and not on autopilot.
All right. Alan, that was a great response. So, you have released over 2,200 podcast episodes. I think that's staggering consistency, but surely maybe somewhere along the line, maybe when you were in your 200 or 500 episodes, the numbers weren't great or adding up, and it felt kind of like a grind. So, did you ever have a moment where you or your co-host looked at each other and thought, this isn't working well. Let's consider quitting. So, if so, then what kept you going?
Yeah, so I'll answer in two ways. On one hand, I never considered quitting. 11 years ago, I had a company I started after my car accident called Alan Lazaros LLC. And the tagline was what you'll never learn in school but desperately need to know. Because up to that point, I was a straight A student in high school. I got what's called the President's Award signed by George W. Bush behind me. I got into college, one of the best tech schools in the world. It's called WPI. It's like a mini MIT in Massachusetts. It's a really expensive school, which was a problem for me because when my stepdad left, I didn't know how I was going to afford it, but I got scholarships and financial aid, fortunately. I got my master's in business. So when I got in the car accident, it was alarming to me that I had never learned anything about personal growth, personal development, or self-improvement. I didn't learn about habits or character or courage or vulnerability or humility. I didn't learn about goal setting. I didn't learn about fitness and finance. I'd learned a little bit about finance in grad school, but it wasn't nearly sufficient, in my honest opinion. In order to do better, you have to know better. And in order to know better, you have to have the knowledge. And so, yeah, on one hand, I never considered quitting because that mission, what you'll never learn in school but desperately need to know, I was going to commit to. I wanted to bring personal development to the school systems and bring personal development to the masses. And now I'm kind of doing that in a very different way because we produce 83 podcasts now. We have a podcast production company. So we are bringing personal development to the masses, mental health, personal development, self-improvement, self-help, self-improvement, personal growth. So we are sort of doing that, but in a different way than I thought. So on one hand, no, I never considered quitting. When it comes to the mission, I never considered quitting. However, I definitely considered pivoting 1,000 times. And so Kevin and I, we have 2,200 episodes, but you got to remember, my podcast was called Conversations Change Lives. His podcast was called the Hyperconscious Podcast. So mine was be a fly on the wall for great conversations with great people. His tagline was change the way you think, change the way you act, change the way you live. And then we combined. And it was the Hyperconscious Podcast meets Conversations Change Lives podcast. For like 20 weeks, we just combined and we partnered up and that was a pretty bad title because we had to go all in on one of them. So then we went all in on the Hyperconscious Podcast. And we did that for, I don't know, I should find the exact number, but probably the first 400 episodes, something like that. And then we rebranded to Next Level University. Next Level University, 0.1% improvement in your pocket for anywhere on the planet, completely free. Health, wealth, life, and love. How to get better every day. How to achieve your goals and dreams. Success in your pocket from anywhere on the planet, completely free. Becoming the male role models we never had because we both grew up without fathers. So all of that stuff came later. So the vehicle of podcasting never changed. The mission never changed, and I never questioned that. What I did question is the approach, the brand, the mantra, the branding, the packaging, the logo. Like we've changed the logo several times, that kind of thing.
All right, Alan. So for the listener right now who has the good job, the nice car, and the polished social media profile, but feels completely hollow inside when they turn off the lights at night. So, what's the first step, or rather, what's the first question they need to ask themselves to find out what's missing?
Yeah, the first one is, what do I really want my life to be about? What is my dominant focus? Like everyone has a dominant focus, even if you don't know it. So there's this thing in our brain called the reticular activating system, RAS, and it's the filtration mechanism of the brain. So right now there's a million things I could focus on. This coffee mug, for example, I'm bringing everyone's attention to. So if you're on YouTube, you can see that. If you're not, you can hear me talk about the mug. All of us have a dominant question and a dominant focus. And I'll give you an example. So I have a client of mine, I've been working with her for 7 years, and I told her that when I was in person, I noticed something. I said, I noticed that you're really insecure. And she said, what do you mean? I said, your dominant focus is how you look. And if you want to be a great leader, you can't have that as your dominant focus. Because if you want to be a great leader, you have to be others conscious, not self-conscious. Now, everybody's self-conscious to an extent, right? But she was to such an extent that it was hindering her ability to think about creative problems in the world. And I said, if you want to be a leader, you have to be aware of other people and help other people and serve and think about the greater good. But you're so self-conscious when you're around people that you can't lead. You're too scared and insecure. So now she's worked on it and she's transformed completely. But my point is her dominant focus in the past was, how do I look? How do I look? How do I sound? How do I look? Do I sound good? Am I okay? Do I look good? Am I okay? That's a lot of people's dominant focus, is themselves. So if you have a dominant focus that is destructive, so I broke my nose way back, and it bothered me that I had a crooked nose for a while. And if that's probably no one else would even notice until I mention it, right? But for me, that really bothered me. That's called being self-conscious. So if my dominant focus right now was my nose, how much value am I going to add to your listeners? So my point is you have to have a dominant focus that's bigger than you. And a dominant focus comes with a dominant question. So my dominant question, I'll give you mine, but you need to choose yours, it's the record playing. How can I get better? What's the best use of my time right now? How do I reach my full potential? How do I help others reach their full potential? How do I bring personal development to the masses? What else can I do? How else can I improve? The focus of somebody tells me what their priorities are, and their priorities tells me where they'll invest their time, effort, and money. And where they invest their time, effort, and money will tell me whether or not they'll be successful at whatever it is. So the truth of the matter is, a lot of our dominant focuses are not constructive, right? Some people are more focused on what they got for Christmas than they are about their own goals and dreams. And I'm telling you right now, you're in trouble if that's the case. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying that because you need a wake-up call like I did.
All right, Alan, that's a really powerful piece of advice. Thanks for sharing. So, I have a personal question for you, Alan. After surviving the crash, leaving the corporate trajectory, and building a global university for self-improvement, I'd like to know, what does being successful truly mean to you now?
I think intrinsically it's being healthy, wealthy, and in love. I think it's reaching my full potential, which again is an idea. I mean, it's an infinite game. It's a mountain that gets higher as you climb it. So I will never reach my full potential. The idea I have for what I'm capable of will always be greater than what I can achieve. And I know that's not true for everyone. If you have low self-efficacy or low self-belief, that's not the case. So some people are actually farther along than they thought they'd get. My business partner, Kevin, says that all the time. He's like, I'm way farther along than I thought I'd get. I said, I don't feel that way at all. So it all depends on your intrinsic self-belief. So on one hand, reaching my full potential is what success means to me. Being healthy, wealthy, and in love, and being the change I wish to see in the world and impacting, trying to help people live a higher quality of life and improve themselves, for sure. And then on the extrinsic side, it's bringing personal development to the masses. It's bringing self-improvement, personal development, mental health awareness, consciousness. The mission is to be the most positively impactful coach, trainer, and podcaster in history. And particularly with the flavor of success and personal development and self-improvement and personal growth and self-help and mental health. And ultimately, if you had to boil it down to one sentence, it would be to be the most positively impactful success and personal development coach, trainer, and podcaster in history. That's the external mountain that gets higher as you climb it. The internal one is reaching my full potential in health, wealth, and love, and then helping other people do the same.
Oh, wow, that was an amazing one. Finally, Alan, for our listeners who want to join your masterclass, listen to your podcast, or check out Next Level University. So where is the best place for them to go?
Thank you. So we have a masterclass on January 1st at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to kickstart 2026 off right, it's how to set and achieve your most important goals. And it's going to be a private, non-recorded, just in Zoom. You don't have to, you can keep your camera off, your mic off if you don't want to engage, or you can engage. It's entirely up to you. But it's going to be, bring your notebook, because I have a electronic notebook that I write on while I share my screen. And that's going to be really good. Setting up 2026 with the right goals. A lot of people think it's the journey, not the destination, but I'm an engineer. The destination you choose in advance dictates the journey. So not having goals is going to keep you aimless and directionless. So having the right goals are important though, because the wrong goals will also take you off the rails. Nextleveluniverse.com. Nextleveluniverse.com is the website, nextleveluniverse.com. And then Next Level University is the podcast. So we're on Spotify, all of them. And then YouTube as well. We're on YouTube as well.
All right, Alan, this has been such a high impact conversation, and I am very excited to have you on the show today, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. Anyone who's watching or listening, thank you for your attention. I think what you give your attention to is the most precious asset you have, and everyone is trying to fight for it. So be very careful with what you listen to, because there's a lot of crap out there.